Hi, this is Professor Lassen. I've been an adjunct professor at Connecticut's community colleges. I've also taught anywhere from kindergarten through 12th grade in the inner city, and I have lots of stuff to talk to you about.
A whole bunch of stuff, but I really wanted to go down and find Federal Hall. Federal Hall is the place where George Washington took his inaugural address. George Washington standing there in a classic pose, and people of all nationalities, all creeds were standing and taking a look at the inscriptions and talking among one another. And as I got my turn to stand in front of George Washington and have my picture taken, you know, Charlotte took some pictures of me. I said, these people don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what's here. And so when I went down, of course I mortified my wife by going from person to person and saying, do you know what this is? Do you know where you are? And one person said, well, yeah, this is George Washington. And it says, do you know why the statue is here? And she said that she didn't. And so in the best hand gestures that I could use to in the language barrier that there was trying to explain what this was, I told her that this is the place where George Washington took his oath of office for the very first time. The very first president taking the oath of office, his inaugural address taking place there, and it was right there. We were standing right where George Washington stood and talked, and it was just it was an amazing time. And I said, do you know what George Washington's people thought of him? His peers, the people that were around him. They said of George Washington that George Washington was first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. George Washington became the central point around whom people gathered. George Washington was elected to be the general of the army. Now, he really didn't think of himself as being competent or capable of that, but quite frankly, he was the tallest guy in the room. So he became commander-in-chief of the army and led the war. After several mistakes and several victories, the war ended, and so he finally said, oh boy, this is the time for me to go back to Mount Vernon. And so he went back to Mount Vernon. And then the Continental Congress got together to put together the Constitution of the United States. There were 13 colonies. Now they were 13 states. You know, a state is really the term that you would use for countries. So really there were 13 countries, and so we have the United States, the United Countries, and so states' rights was preeminent. It was first, and so there were literally dueling battles. There were battles between all these folks putting together the Constitution on states' rights and a whole bunch of other issues, including, sadly, slavery. So they needed someone to bring them together to form a consensus. And on one side we had Ben Franklin. Oh, I love Ben Franklin. He was a wacky guy. Whoa, what a wacky guy Ben Franklin was. He Ben Franklin was a scientist, an engineer, a philosopher, an artist. He truly was an all-around guy, and he spent most of the war in France. He spent most of the war in France because it was important for France to be engaged in the war between the colonies and Great Britain, because France had cash, had capital that they lent to the United States. They had forces, they had ships, they had people that were skilled in war, and especially skilled in fighting the British, since they did it so often. So that's so Ben Franklin, as well as being an ambassador to France, he was quite a ladies' man. As a matter of fact, it was asked of Ben Franklin, what kind of women he preferred the most, and he said that he liked older women because they were more grateful, whatever that means. So we had Ben Franklin, who had been missing for some time, but yet still engaged. We had John Adams, and we had all the other important people, Thomas Jefferson, all these other guys. They were trying to figure out how to put together the Constitution. And again, since George Washington essentially won the war, and being the tallest guy in the room, he carefully got all these guys together with differing ideas of how it should be put together, and formed our Constitution. There have been several amendments to the Constitution, things that were left out in the original plan. The First Amendment, right? It was an amendment, and it had to do with free speech. So very, very important piece of legislation. And then finally, it became time to elect a president. And George Washington was unanimously selected to be the president of the United States, and he was elected the very first president of the United States without opposition, unanimously. First in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen. So again, George Washington didn't get to go to Mount Vernon that he loved so much. And he spent 2 terms, and after 2 terms, that was it as far as he was concerned. People wanted to make him king. They wanted to make him emperor. They wanted to make him all kinds of things. But George Washington, being the kind of selfless person that he was, said, no, it's time for someone else to become president. And so he prepared to leave for Mount Vernon and let others be elected in his place. And at the very end, when George Washington was signing the last bits of paper and gathering up the details of everything, that he was given some papers, and he couldn't see to sign, and so he said, bring me my spectacles. I have given my eyes in the service of my country. So they gave him the spectacles, and they wept. They all wept, because they truly knew that George Washington gave not only his eyes, but he gave all that he had selflessly